Here's our second short video on the Renaissance, so we'll call this Renaissance Part 2. Our last one was on characteristics of Renaissance art. This will be sort of like a case study on Florence and also on Leonardo da Vinci as Renaissance Man. I'll explain your assignment at the end. So now we're going to start with Renaissance Florence, one of the city-states in Italy. Made its money because of the center for trade and mostly in the banking industry. There was a huge wool industry in Florence, as you see there from the picture on the right. And in some ways, it was a city republic or an early democracy, but it was led by an oligarchy or a family, the Medici families. Cosimo, then Piero, then Lorenzo, then another Piero. And if art showed wealth and status, look at this Medici Chapel. Every square inch is covered with art, from the furniture to the floors and even the ceilings. So we'll tell you a little story about Brunelleschi and the design for the dome of St. Maria del Fiore. He was an architect. This cathedral actually existed for many years with no dome, but they wanted to make a dome, but no one knew how. He had to go to Rome and get inspired by some of the ancient domes to try to figure out how to make one. Now, of course, he didn't make one the same way, but just for inspiration. I'm not sure exactly how the physics works, but somehow he realized if you zigzag the bricks, it would put support to make the dome. He had to make a lot of inventions just to have this dome be built, from hydraulic machinery. Think of how you had to get those bricks up so high. So he was a Renaissance man of himself. He even got into shipmaking for a little while. Here's a little of a backstory. For the same cathedral, there was a contest years earlier to make a design for the cathedral doors. It had to show the sacrifice of Isaac, and 7 competitors entered. The only 2 examples left are the ones from Brunelleschi on the left and Ghiberti's on the right. And the winning sample would get to design the entire door. Well, guess who won? Ghiberti won. Michelangelo later said these were like the gates to paradise. It actually really bothered Brunelleschi. That's when he left to Rome and learned how to design the dome. So sometimes failures can lead to your later success. So this is an early statue by Donatello of David. Several years later, Verrocchio made this sculpture of David. So you see just in a few decades the changing ideas of masculinity and sculpture, how it changed. You might know Michelangelo's David. You see even a bigger change. There's a painting by Verrocchio. And a little bit now about a Renaissance individual. Here's the Vitruvian Man by Davinci. He understood that, he really observed things and made a lot of discoveries. And he realized that from, your arm tip to, fingertip to fingertip, let's say, is the same in distance from your head to your foot. And things like that. So it made sculpting and painting a person more accurate. So a Renaissance person has broad knowledge in many areas, but a deeper knowledge in one area. And you can learn in one area and then apply that to another part of your life. So think of a Renaissance individual as a well-rounded man. Remember that sound mind and a sound body. Da Vinci is the quintessential Renaissance man because he was an artist, a sculptor, an architect, a scientist, an engineer, and an inventor. Most of us know him as a painter. In our class, we have a book on his notebooks, and feel free to look at that. You'll see lots of samples like this in here. Some of these sketches that were in his notebook. A little bit of a transition here, I apologize. More about Da Vinci. What did he do? Well, you may know him from his painting The Last Supper. I saw that as a lot of you guys' examples in your last assignment. So you see a lot of use of perspective, that Renaissance characteristic in The Last Supper. Realism and expression you'll see there as well. This is just a little story of, you read the Da Vinci Code there. Nothing we need to get into. Leonardo was also a sculptor. Here's one example. He was also an architect. He started off really as a military engineer, designing weapons and fortress like defense mechanisms for cities. Many Renaissance artists were military engineers. We mentioned in class how he would dissect bodies, and he learned a lot about how the human body works and how it's constructed by this. He had ideas for inventions. Not all were created, but the ideas were there and sketched on his paper. I mentioned he was a military engineer, and here's some examples as well. Lots of words, thoughts in his notebook. If you look at my book, you'll see that as well. And now for your left side assignment, what you need to do is to make a Venn diagram. Your Venn diagram has to compare Davinci with Brunelleschi. So you may have to do a little bit more research on Brunelleschi. You need 4 points in each part of the diagram. All right? See you then.